DxO just released PureRAW 6, and I've made 5 tutorials for their website. Check them all out here and download a free trial with the links shared throughout this video. DxO PureRAW 6 is all about getting the most from your raw photos. This isn't an image editor, it's a starting point. No matter what app you choose to edit your photos in, Photoshop or Lightroom, Luminar, Capture One, or even DxO's own PhotoLab, if you want the ultimate quality and control over your raw processing, start your image in PureRAW. Think of PureRAW as the technical or objective part of the image editing process. It's just rendering the most technically advanced, perfect version of your photo from the raw data that technology allows. The creative or subjective part of image editing is still entirely up to you. PureRAW simply gives you the best possible starting point. This process can be hands-on or hands-off, as easy as a single click or as involved as literally brushing in the precise areas and algorithms of denoising and demosaicing however you want it. Let's start with the simplest approach, just batch processing your images, which is now faster than ever before. Here I have some raw photos already copied to my computer. I can select multiple or just a single one, right-click on that, and from the Actions menu, choose to process with DxO PureRAW 6. You'll see that there's a variety of options here, including DeepPRIME 3, XD3, and the standalone settings. We'll get more into the different options later. For now, we're just going to quickly process an image. I'll choose DeepPRIME 3, and from here you can see that you can choose to process it to a DNG, JPEG, TIFF, or a variety of other options. I'll just choose DNG. At this point, PureRAW launches in the background, processes the image, and then drops it into a new folder. Here's the image, and there's the processed DNG file. But what if you want to start even sooner in the process, when the files are still on your camera's memory card? Well, let's go ahead and insert a card. You have the option to have PureRAW automatically launch whenever it sees a memory card. Then you can just select all the photos in your card and add them to the PureRAW interface. Or of course, you can choose to select any number of photos that were already copied to your computer and just drag and drop them in. A big part of the PureRAW raw processing is reliant on the DxO modules. These are individual profiles for each possible camera and lens combination. And if that sounds like that must be an awful lot of profiles, you'd be right. There's over 111,000 modules in existence today. At this point in the process, if you've never used that camera and lens combination before, DxO PureRAW will prompt you to download them. Click on Save, and they download very quickly, and you'll never have to do that again for that camera and lens combination. Now that we have a bunch of images in PureRAW, let's make the window a little bit bigger and take a look at the options we have. First of all, you can filter and sort your photos, choose to view them in a grid or mosaic view, sort them, and of course, if you select any one photo, you have an info panel that'll tell you everything about it. At this point, I can select any or all of my photos and click on Process. From here, I'm presented with my process presets. There's a variety of presets in here, and of course, you can build your own. This window tells you what the preset is, but if you want to alter it, just click on it, and here you can choose different options. For example, you can choose between DeepPRIME 3 or XD3, what the luminance and detail settings are, and a whole bunch of other options. From down here, you have your output options, and you can choose what you're outputting them to, DNG, TIFF, JPEG, and so on, where they're going to go, how they're going to be named, and even if you want them to open up in another application afterwards. When you're all set, you can click Process Now or Add to Queue. If you add those to the queue, then those images with those settings will get added to the render queue. That means you can then go back into the main interface, choose other images, and choose other presets to apply to them, add those to the queue, and then process everything at once. For now, I'll just cancel this. If you want to see what the process will do before you get started, you can select a single image and then choose Process with Preview. This will open up the preview window so you can see exactly what the processing is going to do. For a quick tour of this interface, you have buttons to hide or reveal certain parts of the interface, to toggle the before and after view on or off, and then you have your fit to view, 100% zoom, or further zoom in options. You can also access your metadata from here again as well. Notice that this photo has an ISO of 20,000, so it's pretty high. And as you can very clearly see from the before and after right now, this started off as a very noisy image, and it is already looking a lot better. From here, I can access the same presets we saw earlier, or completely customize my look. One of the main choices to make is whether you're processing in DeepPRIME 3 or DeepPRIME XD3. XD stands for Extra Details, and now in DxO PhotoLab 6, you can choose XD3 for all of your photos, whether they're made with a Fuji X-Trend sensor or captured on a standard Bayer sensor. The choice is very much image dependent, and you may want to zoom in even farther than 100% to really see the difference. For example here, looking at his eyebrow and his eye, you can see a subtle but notable difference as we go between DxO DeepPRIME 3 and DeepPRIME XD3. It's worth noting that XD3 does take considerably longer to process. So while DeepPRIME 3 is sufficient for the vast majority of your images, for those one-off, very special images, it may be worth looking at exploring XD3. From here, you have other options over your processing and denoising algorithm. You can adjust the luminance slider, you can force additional details in, and essentially adjust the sliders until you get exactly the look you want. You can adjust lens sharpness optimization, turn vignetting on and off, disable chromatic aberration correction, and so on. Lens distortion is a big one, and let me load up a different image to show you what that will do. Here I have this close-up, very wide-angle image of a cow, and I'll disable the before view, and then turn lens distortion correction back on. You can see that there's a pretty significant difference in what the image looks like. To understand what PureRAW is actually doing, I'm going to switch from image cropped to original ratio to the complete image area. And from here you can see exactly what DeepPRIME is doing to correct the center of that image. It's pretty dramatic. So if you shot an image with a super wide angle lens but want to correct for some of that distortion, this will take care of that. Of course, in this case, it was done on purpose, so I'll leave it alone. And then finally, you have retouching or dust removal. Again, I'm going to choose a different image for this. I'll choose this one here, and again, process with preview. As I drag the sensitivity slider on the dust removal, you can see circles appearing on the image. This is identifying the dust spots that the software has found. Let's zoom into 200% to get a closer look at things. Let's find a good big spot up here. There's a whole collection of them, but I want you to focus on this part of the screen right here. As I toggle dust removal on and off, you can see the spot appearing and disappearing. So this is a fantastic tool if you find that you have a dirty sensor and need to quickly and easily clean things up. Finally, I'm going to go back to this image of our gentleman here and zoom back in all the way. Up in the top right, we have two other tabs we can access. This is the general area, but the next one is local adjustments. And this allows me to very precisely adjust the demosaicing and denoising algorithm for a specific part of the image by simply brushing in a mask. Let me zoom in even closer here. Let's go to 400%, and we're going to focus just on his eye. If I go back to the main page here, and I swap between DeepPRIME 3 and DeepPRIME XD3, we can see that in DeepPRIME 3, there's quite a lot of detail and a little bit of noise in there. And when I go to DeepPRIME XD3, there's even more detail and less noise. But let's just say that I don't really like the way that XD3 is handling his eye. I actually prefer that in DeepPRIME 3. So what I'll do is I'll set the entire image to XD3, go to the masking area, and then paint in a layer mask. From here, I have adjustments over the size, feathering, and so on of the brush. So I'll just very quickly brush in an area around his eye, hold down the Option key to negative brush away to clean up that mask a little bit. And now back over here, we can see that that particular layer mask is already set to DeepPRIME 3. So that's processing this part of the image with DeepPRIME 3 instead of DeepPRIME XD3. And if I toggle this off, we can see the difference. So there we've got some of that texture and noise back, and here it's all gone. Finally, we also have an output page. From here, we can choose whether our DNGs are going to be compressed or uncompressed. High fidelity compressed DNGs is a new feature in DxO DeepPRIME 6, which I encourage you to watch the What's New video to understand more about this. You can also choose to render out as a TIFF, a JPEG, or even as a smart object that opens directly in Photoshop, truly giving you the ultimate control. What this means is that you will have a Photoshop file with this image as a smart object layer inside of Photoshop, which you can then reopen back into PureRAW 6 and continue to reprocess. Amazing. If you have JPEG output enabled, you can apply DxO Smart Lighting, choose the destination, the file renaming, assign a unique ICC profile if you want to, and then choose if you want these to open in an application or not. And once again, either click Process Now or add them to the queue. And that's everything you need to know to get started with DxO PureRAW 6. PureRAW's default settings will almost always handle the image perfectly on its own, but sometimes you just want to take a little bit more control. Maybe you want a little more noise reduction here and a little less over there, or even a different type of noise reduction right there. In DxO PureRAW 6, not only can you brush masks to define what level of denoising you want on specific parts of the image, now you can actually apply DeepPRIME 3 to one part and DeepPRIME XD3 to another. Check this out. This image looks pretty great with DeepPRIME 3, and if I toggle the before and after, we can see where we came from and where we've gotten to, and it already looks awesome. But what does DeepPRIME XD3 look like? Well, if I select that and give it a moment, we'll see that we actually get a few extra details in there. Let's zoom in a little bit closer. I'll go into 200%. Let's focus on his eye here, and then toggle this back and forth again. There's DeepPRIME 3, and there's DeepPRIME XD3. You can see additional details in the eyebrow and even superior noise reduction with this algorithm. But maybe XD3 doesn't look best everywhere. For example, let's take a closer look at his eye. With standard DeepPRIME 3, in the eye we get a little bit more texture. It's a little bit more noise, but there's more texture to it, and I kind of like the way that looks better. When I go to DeepPRIME XD3, it almost appears too clean, unrealistic. So let's use DeepPRIME 3 just for his eye. For that, I'll go to the local adjustment masks. From here, I can brush in my mask, and here at the top we can see our brushing tools. You can choose the size, feathering, and so on of the brush, but I'll just leave it at the default settings and brush that in. Now at first, of course, that's going to be a little bit sloppy, so I'll hold down the Option key and brush some of that away, just to clean up that mask a bit. Now we do want to be careful here. We want to have a nice feathering out from one method to the other, and that's a pretty good looking mask. I'll go ahead and rename this so that I can keep an eye on things, and then I'll switch that over to DeepPRIME 3. Take a close look at that eye. I'm going to go ahead and toggle the layer on and off, and you can see the difference between the original DeepPRIME XD3 and now DeepPRIME 3. It's subtle, but at this point, subtlety is everything. I've gone in here to define exactly the level of denoising and even the algorithm that I want for that one particular spot on my image. There's more to it that you can do. Down here, you can change the luminance and force details on that adjustment. So if I bring the luminance up, we'll get a little bit more denoising. And with force details, I can force details back in or go ahead and pull them out, because in this case, maybe I want a little bit less. You can also disable or adjust the lens sharpness optimization for that part of the image, but I'll leave that one where it is. This level of control is unprecedented. To be able to choose two different denoising and demosaicing algorithms for the same image is truly remarkable. The latest version of DxO PureRAW, now at version 6, brings us not only image quality enhancements, but significant performance and even space savings improvements. We'll start with DeepPRIME XD3, the third generation of the advanced XD technology. That's XD for extra details, which was originally developed for Fuji X-Trans sensors, but now is available for Bayer sensors as well, meaning everyone can use it. Let's have a look. This photo of a lion is already benefiting greatly from DeepPRIME 3. We can see very clearly the dramatic reduction in noise and the enhancement of details. But let's go ahead and compare it to DeepPRIME XD3. I'll turn off the before and after, and then switch this to XD3. And look at that. Even more detail. DeepPRIME 3 has dramatic noise reduction and detail improvement, but when I go to XD3, the image gets even cleaner and a little more detail comes through. But let's see if we can get even more. I'll take the force detail slider up just a bit more and check that out. We still have a very clean image, but with even more detail. The difference can be subtle, but subtlety can be everything. The next feature is called high fidelity compression for DNG files, meaning your DNGs can now be compressed to a size a quarter of the previous size with no visual image quality loss. Let me prove it to you. First of all, here's a batch of 100 raw photos that I processed as both DNG and DNG high fidelity. You can see the original 100 images took 3.59 gigabytes, so about 36 megabytes per image. Converted to DNG, that folder ballooned to 7.16 gigabytes. However, as DNG high fidelity, 1.19 gigabytes. That is an amazing and remarkable size reduction. But of course, none of this matters if the quality isn't there. So let me prove to you just how good these are. This is a raw photo that I processed as a standard DNG and as a high fidelity DNG. They're layered in Photoshop, and as I toggle the top layer, the high fidelity version, on and off, you can't see any difference, of course, as you would expect. If I zoom into 1:1, or even a little bit closer, pan over to her face, and again, toggle that top layer on and off, we see no difference. Visually, we can't see any difference here, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a difference. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So there's a trick that I learned a long time ago in how to compare two files so that you can see exactly what the difference is, even things that you can't see with the naked eye. And that is to layer two files and then apply the difference blend mode to the top one. With the difference blend mode on, any two pixels stacked that are identical will render as pure black. If there's any difference at all, we'll see it rendering as a color. So let's start by enabling the difference mode. With that top layer selected, I'll go ahead and set that to difference. And once again, we see pure black. I'll zoom out, zoom back in, and you just can't see anything. That's good enough, but let's take it a bit farther. Along with this difference trick that I learned, there's a way that you can force the difference. That is to flatten the file and then do something called auto levels, which will automatically take the darkest pixels and the brightest pixels, which may be barely brighter than pure black, and stretch them out. So let's do that. I'll flatten this document and then run auto levels, which is Command-Shift-L. There might be something. Let's try auto levels again. Okay, at this point we can see something, but this is basically cheating. If you have to difference, flatten, and then auto level twice to see the difference, I think we can call that an imperceptible difference with that compression. High fidelity compression for a quarter of the size is absolutely remarkable. The last big new feature is batch parallelization, which means that when you're batch processing photos, multiple photos are processed in parallel. Watching images batch process makes for a boring demo, so I'll just impress you with a few numbers. Of course, the actual speeds you get will be different than mine because our computers may be different and we're probably shooting with different cameras. But in my tests on my MacBook Pro M2 Max, a single raw photo took a hair over 4 seconds to process using DeepPRIME 3, while 2 images took just under 3 seconds each. But then 10 images took just 2 seconds each, so half of the single image time. And 100 images processing at the same time processed in under 2 seconds each. Now that's all with DeepPRIME 3. With XD3, where this really matters, I didn't run a 100 image test, but where a single photo would take 25 seconds to process, multiple photos consistently took 19 seconds each. So for a batch of 100 images, that's the difference between 42 minutes and 32 minutes now that we have batch parallelization. So overall, some very nice improvements to DxO PureRAW 6. DxO PureRAW includes the most advanced denoising and demosaicing algorithms called DeepPRIME 3 and DeepPRIME XD3. XD for extra details. Sounds impressive, right? But what does that actually mean? Denoising, I think, is easy to understand, so let's start there. Digital images, especially higher ISO digital images, can be noisy or have digital grain. And the process of denoising is removing as much of that noise as possible while maintaining as much detail as possible in the photo. And DeepPRIME is really good at that. But what is demosaicing? Well, I'm glad you asked. Demosaicing is the process of converting the raw data of a raw image file into a viewable RGB picture. You see, your camera doesn't capture each pixel of data at its final color. In fact, it doesn't even capture pixels. Something called a photosight on the sensor records a red, green, or blue value, and then through the process of demosaicing that data, an RGB image that we can see is created. How that raw data is demosaiced is up to the engineers writing the raw decoding software, which is why the same raw photo opened in Adobe Photoshop, Apple Photos, Capture One, or DxO PhotoLab will look different. And DxO's goal in creating DeepPRIME is to make the absolute best raw converter possible, giving you the best color, the most details, the least chromatic aberration, and the least noise possible. A big part of the DxO demosaicing process is that lens and sensor optimization is applied to each image using DxO modules, each module being unique for the specific camera and lens model combination you're shooting with. Each module is individually created in DxO Labs through critical testing of that exact camera and lens combination. And if that sounds like it must be an impossibly high number of modules, you'd be right. There are over 111,000 DxO modules developed, with the ones you need automatically downloaded and applied the first time you load a photo taken with a new camera and lens combination. These modules provide unique lens sharpening optimization, chromatic aberration removal, and lens distortion correction, each tuned precisely to that specific camera and lens. The other important difference between DxO's demosaicing and others is that the denoising process happens at the same time as demosaicing, giving you a much better result than processing it afterwards, as most other decoders do. Think of it like adding salt to your cookie dough. If you don't add salt until the cookies are out of the oven, they're just not as good. Now that that's out of the way, what are the processing options that you have in PureRAW 6? The first choice, DeepPRIME 3, is the best all-around denoising and demosaicing algorithm, delivering smooth transitions and natural textures in record time. For most photos, that is likely to be the choice that you'll make. However, the other option, called XD3, XD for extra details, has been created specifically to extract extra details from your sensor. And by the way, if you're upgrading from PureRAW 5, a significant difference in PureRAW 6 is that XD3 now works with all sensor types. If you have a photo with super fine details, then it's worth comparing DeepPRIME 3 to XD3 to see which you prefer. There's no one answer of which is better for your image. You can see the differences almost immediately on screen as you swap between them in the process preview and make the choice of which process you prefer. XD3 is significantly more computationally expensive, meaning it takes longer to process, so it's generally a choice you'd make on individual images and not apply to all of your photos. But of course, that's up to you. You have all the same tools available for both DeepPRIME selections, including luminance and force detail sliders, which lets you control the amount of noise removed and the amount of fine details maintained, lens sharpness optimization, which can be selected from presets or dialed in manually, allowing you to precisely maximize lens sharpness without introducing halo or other artifacts, devignetting, chromatic aberration correction, and lens distortion correction, with choices of how you want the image cropped or not once the image is corrected. You also have selective raw decoding through local adjustment masks, allowing you to selectively apply luminance, details, and lens sharpness optimization through brushed-in layer masks. And new to PureRAW 6, you can actually apply different DeepPRIME algorithms through the masks, meaning one part of your image can be processed with DeepPRIME 3 and another part processed with DeepPRIME XD3. It's a remarkable amount of control. All of these settings can be saved as presets, allowing you to dial in your preferred combination and save those for future use. And when it's time to export, you can choose from DNG, compressed DNG, TIFF, or JPEG formats. Choose where they export to, how to rename the files, and if you want them automatically transferred to another application or not. You can even choose to have the original RAW file sent as well, so you could have both the original RAW and the PureRAW decoded files showing up side by side in your editor of choice. Using PureRAW adds minimal steps and maximum quality to your workflow. Now that you know the difference between the DeepPRIME choices and all the tools that you have available to maximize your images, you're ready to take your photo processing to the next level. As a Lightroom Classic user, there's a great workflow for DxO PureRAW 6 that doesn't require you to change a thing about the way you work. Import, organize, and edit as you always have, and at any point in the process, you can choose to reprocess a RAW file with PureRAW, then compare the results side by side. Let's have a look. This is an old photo that I took on a Lumix GH4, and if we look closely at it, it's really not that sharp. There's quite a bit of detail that's just kind of gone to mush. It's an older camera, small micro four thirds sensor, apparently a pretty dirty sensor too. We can see lots of spots around here, and overall, the image, well, let's just say that it could be better. So let's see if I can make it better with PureRAW 6. The image has already been adjusted in Lightroom. If I turn the corrections off, you can see what the true original actually looks like. So I'll right-click on the photo, go to the Export menu, and then choose Preview and Process with DxO PureRAW 6. I can also simply hand it off to PureRAW and have it automatically come back in, but in this case, I want to see exactly what PureRAW 6 is going to do to it. All right, here's that old photo. Let's zoom into 100% and have a closer look over by the trees. Let's actually zoom into 200% here and really have a close look because, wow, what a difference. The old and the new is remarkable in here. One of the other features that I have in PureRAW 6 is the ability to automatically retouch the image to remove dust. And if we look at spots like right here or up here and up here in the sky, there's quite a few sensor spots in there. So let me turn on dust removal. We'll actually zoom out real quick to see just how much work this is going to save. And then I'll take my sensitivity slider and start dragging that up. And we can see all the sensor spots being highlighted there that the software is going to get rid of. That is pretty cool. Let's take a close look at those and make sure we like what we're seeing. I'll go back into 200% and let's just zoom over to this part of the image here. And you can see spots all around here that are being removed. If I toggle that off, there's those spots back again. So yeah, that's going to save a huge amount of time. Not only is it making the image better than it's ever been before, but it's also cleaning it up for me. I'll go ahead and process that image by clicking Process Now, which means the image is going to be rendered and then automatically sent back to the same folder in Lightroom. Lightroom is going to automatically come back forward, and now I'm looking at that newly processed image. But the original adjustments that I made aren't there. That's okay. It's easy enough to reapply them. I'll just go find this picture in the original folder. So back to the library and to my raw photos folder. There's the original image and the one that just came back in. So if I go into the develop module, right click on the new image, and go to Develop Settings, then choose Paste Settings from Previous, it's going to automatically copy the settings over from the previous image. Now as we look up close, we can see so much more detail in here than we ever had before. Let's do a true side-by-side comparison, zoom in close, and look at that. What an absolutely huge difference. It's so easy to take any images, new or old, and reprocess them with PureRAW 6 to see exactly what's hiding under all those pixels.